Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. The movie begins with a couple on their boat in the open sea, everything going well. After drinking a lot and making a mess, they end up completely lost. After a while, they realize they've drifted far away and find themselves near a large island in the distance. They decide to go ashore and look for someone to help them. They are not fully focused on anything, and indeed the woman goes ashore, entering the island to search for help, while the husband stays behind, tying the boat. As the woman walks into the island, she finds a strange forest surrounded by wires and barriers, resembling a suspicious facility. She assumes that the houses nearby belong to a military establishment and starts calling for help. When no one answers, she decides to return to the forest, hoping to find something useful. After searching for a bit, she begins to hear strange noises coming from the trees around her. At this point, she becomes scared, thinking it's a wild animal, and starts running in fear before it catches her. She keeps running, feeling like someone is watching her. She tries to call out to her husband, but unfortunately, he is too far away to hear her. The woman becomes certain that this is the end, and no one is coming to save her. She starts running faster, but suddenly someone grabs her easily. It turns out to be strange creatures that grab her by the legs and drag her on the ground. The woman screams loudly, trying to hold on to anything to escape, but the creature starts eating her fingers, and she is unable to resist. The creature drags her away to its place, and she completely surrenders to her fate. Her screams finally reach her husband, but unfortunately, it's too late, and there's nothing he can do to help her, not even save her. After that, Matt and John, two skilled brothers who are pilots. They have their own plane and are heading to the same island with their childhood friends Noah, Sarah, and Nikki. It turns out that before the island became abandoned, there were a few residents, including the brothers' uncle, Don. The place had remained deserted for many years until the friends decided to spend their vacation at Uncle Don's house. Upon arriving, the brothers decide to check out the storage room where the generator is, and they also want to see if their uncle's old car still works. To their surprise, they find the car running, despite all these years, though it needs some repairs. Meanwhile, back at the house, Sarah and Noah are in charge of food and drinks. But since the electricity is out, they have to wait for the brothers to start the generator in order to use the blender. As soon as Matt and John get the generator running, Sarah is surprised and excited, but her joy is short-lived as the power goes out again. They decide to head to the room on the first floor, which was completely dark due to the power cut. Noah uses his lighter to light up the space. After a bit of exploring, they find the fuse box for the electricity and replace the burnt-out parts, restoring the power once again. With the electricity back on, their vacation officially begins, and they are having a great time. After some swimming, they sit down and watch John playing with a bow and arrow. Everyone is watching him until they notice a cute dog appearing from the forest. Sarah immediately takes a liking to the dog and starts playing with it. Later that night, Noah is preparing drinks in the kitchen when he notices the dog staring at him angrily, as if ready to attack. Frightened, Noah quickly runs out to his friends and tells them what happened. But to their surprise, the dog escapes through a hole in the wall, which seemed very strange. Sarah, who had grown attached to the dog, decides to bring it back into the house. That night, Sarah and John go out into the forest to look for the dog. Using flashlights, they manage to find the dog among the trees, but as they approach it, a giant dog suddenly leaps at Sarah and bites her leg. John rushes to help her, but the dog quickly runs off with the puppy for no apparent reason. Sarah is brought back, and her friends clean her wound to prevent any infection, worried that the dog bite might spread a dangerous virus. The next day, Matt and Nikki decide to return to the city to get Sarah proper treatment, fearing the virus. However, John reassures them that it's not a serious injury and that they should wait a bit. He leaves the decision to Sarah, who believes the dog attacked because it was trying to protect its pup. She doesn't want to ruin their vacation, so the others agree with her and decide to continue enjoying their time. The next day, just after midnight, John heads to the kitchen to get a drink but starts feeling an odd anger building up inside him. He calls out to Sarah, but she doesn't respond. Suddenly, she approaches him without saying a word. John is shocked by her behavior, but she quickly snaps out of it, leaves him, and walks away. The following morning during breakfast, everyone is puzzled by Sarah's strange eating habits. She was ravenous, eating aggressively, and refused to let anyone near her food. After breakfast, the men decided to go practice shooting and hunt in the forest, while the women stayed together. We then see the men standing in the woods, but they couldn't find any animals to hunt. Noah steps away to clean his camera, and while he's focused on that, he starts hearing strange, eerie sounds. Suddenly, he realizes he's surrounded by a large pack of dogs. He tries to escape but trips, only to find his friends nearby. He tells them what happened, but before he can explain further, Sarah's husband appears, covered in blood and looking terrifying. He warns them that the dogs don't want anyone on the island. Before he can finish explaining, a dog suddenly attacks him, starting to devour him just like they did to his wife. The three friends, terrified, run as fast as they can back to the house. When they get closer, they find the women also running from the wild animals. They all gather together just before entering the house, but one of the dogs catches Nikki's leg and bites her. John grabs his bow and quickly shoots an arrow at the dog, but unfortunately, it hits Nikki's leg instead. She screams in agony, but the dog, frightened, runs away. Once inside, Matt tries to treat Nikki's leg, wrapping it with a large piece of cloth since they had no proper medical supplies. One of the group tries to understand what's happening and learns why the place has been abandoned for years. It turns out that a strange company had rented entire houses on the island for dogs, intending to train them to assist blind people. However, a few years ago, one of the dogs was infected with a dangerous virus that spread to all the dogs in the training center. The center was shut down, and the island was left deserted. The odd thing, however, was that the infected dogs were supposed to have died within a year. So it's strange that they are still alive after all these years, and they're carrying this dangerous virus. Upon learning this, Noah starts panicking and screaming hysterically, realizing that they need to get medical help for the two bitten women, not just apply makeshift bandages. Suddenly, the window shatters, and a dog jumps through, attacking Noah and knocking him to the ground. The dog then stands facing Sarah, ready to attack. But before it could reach her, John grabs it just in time, with his brother quickly helping him. They both use a metal weapon to kill the dog, and it dies instantly. After that, the friends quickly gathered all their belongings to leave the strange, abandoned house. Just before leaving, they noticed two dogs waiting for them near their private plane, the only way they could escape the island. Realizing they couldn't leave without the plane, they decided to wait for the dogs to leave. However, a few moments later, Noah looked out of the window and saw the plane sinking into the sea. The dogs had cut the ropes holding it, and they disappeared from in front of the house. The group panicked, knowing that if they waited any longer, they would lose their chance to escape. They hurried out of the house, terrified of the dogs, and Noah decided to swim to the plane in the sea. As he approached, he managed to flip the plane over slightly, but to his shock, he saw the two dogs sitting on top of it. As soon as they saw Noah, they jumped into the water to chase him. Noah swam quickly back toward his friends and finally reached them. The group scrambled to get out of the water, but just as they made it onto the dock, one of the ferocious dogs attacked. Noah managed to fend it off with his baseball bat, using the distraction to rush everyone back into the house. The dogs chased them, but the group made it inside just in time. They quickly boarded up all the windows with wooden planks to prevent the dogs from entering. Once they were done, Noah tried to call the police, but there was no signal, and the phones weren't working. Matt and John grabbed the dog that had attacked them earlier in the morning, wrapped it in some cloth, and threw it outside the house. They realized their best chance of survival was to head to the other side of the island, where there was a boat. They also remembered the man who had appeared to them earlier, understanding that he was the boat's owner, or had at least used a car to reach the island near the dog's training center. They quickly jumped into the car and drove to the other side of the island, but the ferocious dogs were already surrounding Sarah's body, tearing into her violently. In the meantime, the group arrived at the dog's house, hoping to find a phone to call the police and request help. They entered the place only to discover that it wasn't a training center at all. It was a lab where experiments were conducted on animals to make them ferociously aggressive, like the ones they had encountered. It turned out that what the dogs had wasn't a virus. Instead, they had been genetically modified through experiments to become extremely vicious and highly intelligent. The doctors who conducted the experiments didn't care about the dog's safety and fled to save themselves when things got out of control, leaving the island to burn down with everyone on it. The group finally understood why the dogs were so powerful and intelligent, and why the forest was filled with nothing but dogs, because they had killed all the other animals. The group found a radio, but Nikki signaled from the window, showing them that the communication cable was disconnected. They needed to fix it to use the radio. John decided to climb up and reconnect the cable. While doing so, he spotted the couple's boat still anchored in the sea. He managed to reconnect the cables, and Nikki used loudspeakers to amplify the radio signal. However, while she was operating it, the wires started sparking and catching fire, leading to a small explosion. John got electrocuted, receiving a severe shock that knocked him to the ground. Luckily, it was a mild shock, and he survived, but the fire quickly spread throughout the building. The dogs, sensing the commotion, attempted to break in, and they succeeded. John's brother fought off the dogs with his bat, while Nikki opened a gas cylinder and let the dogs into the building. The entire place exploded with the dogs inside. The two brothers were terrified, surrounded by dogs on all sides, thinking it was the end for them. But suddenly, Nikki appeared in the car, running over every dog in her way. She had survived the explosion by quickly escaping and shutting the door behind her. They hurried to the boat, with the dogs chasing after them, but the dogs couldn't catch them once they started the boat and escaped the island. The dogs watched them from afar, As they sat in the boat, finally safe at sea, they were shocked when a vicious dog suddenly appeared right in front of them. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button to get more new videos.